to another episode of Making a Comic. We are just going to be doing the interview today. We didn't post last week because I was sick all week, sucked ass. This week, though, I'm really excited. It's my good friend, Mr. Compton Smith. He runs High Humidity Humor out in the Gulf Coast. They perform all over the place. He runs a lot of mics Friday through Monday at Serta's Coffee. You can find it on his website. He just started a new mic at First 11 Coffee in downtown Pensacola. Runs some shows. He's got Stephen Lawley coming up in the next couple of days at Odd Colony. Great guy, a lot of insight. He does do comedy all around the region. Sounds like he's going to be doing it broadening farther and farther away, which is obviously what you always want as a comedian. And I really liked my conversation with him because it's very motivating and gave me a lot of insight as far as chasing after your dream. And it's really inspiring to see somebody that's out there doing it. Like, you can hear a lot about what people are trying to do. You can hear a lot about what people are thinking that they want to do, but when somebody's out there and they're putting in the work like Compton is, it gives me a lot of motivation as a comedian to get to that next level. So I hope you enjoy it.
Probably chair.
This is what I call mama's table. But it's for mama, This is when like when mama comes in, she hears this.
What are you doing?
It's down. It's going down.
What are you doing?
Welcome to another episode. My guest, Mr. Compton Smith.
Hi.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good.
First thing, tell us a little about yourself, how you got started in the comedy, just a little rundown where you're at these days.
So I started in 2017.
17.
I think it was September or October. And it was here in Pensacola at the back porch.
The back porch.
Yeah.
I have actually heard of that, and it sounds like it's kind of sad that it's no longer a mic thing.
Oh, well, yeah, kind of, sort of.
Good and bad, as with all mics.
It was the home of comedy in Pensacola for a long time.
Yeah.
For a long time.
And what brought you to go and actually do your first set?
A
thing that you've been pondering over for a while and you just kind of got the nerve to do it, or was it something planned more specifically?
A little bit of both. In a way, I like to tell people that in a way it was inevitable, because being a public speaker and being a fan of comedy, sooner or later I was going to try it out. But the thought never occurred to me that I could be a comic, because I grew up watching of course, Carlin, but Gallagher was one of my first big exposures, and then Super Dave.
Yeah.
If you can call that comedy. So the thought never occurred to me to be a comedian until well after I had started performing. So I was a musician for a long time.
I didn't know that. What did you perform?
Play trumpet. Trumpet and tuba.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, man.
I knew you were a band nerd. Somehow I knew.
I can play anything brass as long as it's not a trombone or a French horn. You need a left hand for that.
So were you doing like orchestra? Like you were doing?
No, I was marching band. Professional marching band, Drum Corps International.
Okay.
That was the peak. And then I got into the casino industry. And then got back into playing music after I became an audio engineer, because I was on stage with a bunch of musicians all the time. It's like, oh, fuck it, let's play along.
That probably helps you out as a comedian, doesn't it? Knowing stage work, stage time, even if it's not speaking directly.
Any performing arts.
Yeah.
You learn, I know a lot about graphic EQs and how to make a room sound good and all that kind of weird stuff. So I have really good mic technique because of that.
Would you say for newer comics that's something that they should focus on learning as they're coming on the other, as they're being funny, also come up with how does stage equipment work, how to set up, how to blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of people get lost on the fact that comedy is a lot more than people think it is to be a comic.
Yeah.
So to really be an excellent comic, you have to know how to manipulate the tools of your craft. Mm-hmm. And our only tool is a microphone. Right. So learning funny is one thing, but if you don't know timing and tempo and how to manipulate your equipment and your environment, right, you're missing a huge part of the equation.
Right. You can't be funny to people who can't fucking hear you.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So you said you were always a fan of comedy. What were some of your influences, the comedians that you liked growing up?
Gallagher was the first.
Gallagher.
I got to see Gallagher, Carrot Top, and Carlin live as a child when I was about 11 years old.
That is a interesting threesome.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So my dad was into comedy, and he had recorded Gallagher's Leap Year Marathon in 1983, 84, whenever that was. Uh-huh. And it's 4 hours. Like, it's all of Gallagher's shit stacked up in 4 hours with him doing some sketch comedy in between.
The mallet and everything.
All of it.
Oh my God. Yes.
The giant couch trampoline. He won't say it to me. I can quote most of Gallagher's material because we had a little TV VCR combo that when we would go on road trips or vacation, which we did pretty regularly, they would just throw that tape in and let us watch whatever we wanted in the back seat.
Hell yeah.
So here we were, me and my younger brother, listening to just the most raunchy shit.
Yeah. Way before you knew exactly what it all meant.
It had no clue.
Same. I was the same with Patrice O'Neill kind of stuff. But
that's even even more graphic.
Yeah. So you're growing up listening to that, and that's like just kind of planting the seed in your brain that you want to do this, or that you just appreciate the art form and you just became a fan?
That I appreciate the art form because there were a couple of things in conjunction with that. I got very interested in linguistics because of My Fair Lady.
Okay.
Because Disney Channel played nothing but musicals late at night. And so this is what I was exposed to. And then, of course, all the redneck stuff. So trying to get away from sounding like a redneck.
Well, you grew up in Alabama.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. I grew up in Alabama. I forgot where I was going with that.
That's okay. But your influences. So eventually that brought you to the stage.
Yeah.
And what was that first experience like for you? Did you get laughs? Did you get just real fucking nervous? Did you take positives away from it?
So standing on stage is pretty easy for me.
Okay.
And I was very prepared. I'd been to a couple of open mics at Back Porch. Mm-hmm. So I had an idea. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I had an idea what I was getting into. Mm-hmm. And I had a prepared 5 minutes. And it was.
Did you rehearse?
Pretty tight, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like I would sit in front of the camera and like the whole 9 yards. So I did okay my first time. Like I did well enough for a couple of people to compliment me after I got off stage, which
is everything for a new comic.
Oh yeah, that's all the encouragement I needed to keep.
Oh my God. When I get a compliment from like an experienced good comic, that's better than a blowjob. Like I mean, it's the same. It eventually turns into the same thing because I'm thinking about it later. But yeah.
But I was also going to add that what's interesting for me is when I got into comedy, I had a choice. I'd seen a couple of open mics, and I was planning on going back into music because I enjoyed being on the stage and I liked the performing arts. But I wanted to do something new, something that's really, really hard, and something that's a very, very small club. Okay. And that's comedy.
Yeah, that's comedy.
Yeah, like, or you could climb a mountain. Fuck all that shit.
Right.
So
one is way more enjoyable than the other. I'd have to. I mean, I don't know that I've never climbed a fucking mountain, but there's nothing better than getting a laugh.
I've been skiing, and if you've ever like sidestepped halfway up a hill, that's as close to Mount Everest as I need to get.
Hell yeah.
And like it's a lot of steps up. We get it. Fuck off.
So one thing that so I'm about, I'd say, a year and a half in. Some other comics around the same time frame as me, and one thing that's been the most challenging for me is they say comics finding your voice or your click. Yeah. Do you feel like you found your voice?
I had a voice before I got into comedy.
Okay.
I knew full well who I was.
Would you be able to? Can you explain that in words, or is that a more feeling and vibe?
So it's all about originality for me. Like the kilt came about because nobody else was doing it.
Yeah.
Like you don't see it every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's super fucking comfortable. So why wouldn't you?
So yours is more of a pragmatic kind of.
Well, the kilt came about as a manifestation of an ideology and a philosophy. Like if you believe in simplicity, then wear it. Like so, the simplest piece of clothing you can wear is a skirt, and one that's got elastic and Velcro around the waist, even simpler.
That almost sounds like from my perspective, I could be wrong. This totally sound like bullshit, but that almost sounds like how your comedy comes off. Like you get directly to the point. And it's your first thought almost that you had, and then you just made that into a bit that you go tell.
A lot of times.
Is that how you feel? Is that accurate for me to describe it that way?
Yeah, because I have my own opinion already. Like I have a developed worldview, which means
unique personal worldview.
Yeah, which means finding my voice or finding my identity. I don't have to worry about that. Like I know who I am. I could list out what I think, what I believe, why I believe it. All that shit. And so that makes it very easy to get on stage and say shit. Doesn't mean it's funny though.
So you, that's the part.
Yeah.
I think it's funny, but do you try and write from that perspective where you're like, okay, this is where I stand as a human being. Where can I find the funny in that?
Nah, it's like having a well-trained autopilot if you're a drinker. Like, you get to a certain point, you want to make sure your autopilot can get you home.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Don't drink and drive.
No, don't. Definitely don't do that.
But I 100% understand what you mean.
What I meant by get home is find a cute lady to take you home.
Exactly.
There you go.
That's what good say.
That's exactly what I meant.
So how do you know, so for the newer comics coming up, like me, how do I know when I'm hitting my voice? Because the hardest thing for me to do as a comic is sometimes I'll say, a joke and it'll kill one time and it'll bomb the next.
Yeah.
So getting to the point where you're repeating, I feel like that's kind of how you find your voice, where you repeat the humor in it. So how do you know you're in that zone?
Trying too hard. That's the other side of that. So somebody that's super comfortable, like pick your favorite famous comic and look at how comfortable they are on stage.
Okay.
They don't question anything. Yeah. So when it comes to mind, bam, it's the first thing is coming out. Because once you develop to the point of mastery or expertise, you live the formula. That's why the great comics are always funny, like in a conversation or anything, because the way they structure it, when it comes out, it's already in formula. It's already a joke.
Yeah, that's why sometimes you'll see comics literally talk about the weather and it's still funny.
Yeah, because they've already got their own bent on that. They don't have to wonder, what do I have to do to pull this off? It's like, no, this is what I think. Bam. So there's not that trying too hard thing. Like, look at Patrice, like so effortless.
Oh my God, yeah. He's probably, him and Louis C.K., not the bad parts, but him and Louis C.K. are probably my biggest two influence. I grew up as an Opie and Anthony guy.
Sure, me too.
Love that show.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Do you think that show could exist today if it came out again?
Yeah, I think it could. There are a lot of people that say shit like that can't, and that you can't make the movies. Like, you really could. It's just that nobody's trying. We are, as a culture, it's a fascinating time, and like we could go off on a huge tangent here, if you want to talk culture.
Come up, say what's on your mind.
And so,
real quick, with that, just before like the whole you can't talk about this or whatever, you gotta be worried about that. I don't really buy that all that much, because I think from what I can tell, from my very naive point of view, intent matters a hell of a lot more than content. So if your intention is to be funny, you could almost get away with talking about anything, as long as you're genuinely trying to be funny. It's the people that are punching down or just trying to be edgy for no reason that get into trouble, which I find happens a lot with brand new comics. I went through that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's where you find laughs. The easiest place to find a laugh or a guffaw is say something vulgar.
Yeah.
And then say something loud. Like they're easy things that can get you over. Yeah. And so, but part of comedy is finding all of the laughs and figuring out how to get the ones you want when you want them.
Yeah, exactly. And then being able to repeat that in any room.
Yeah.
So finding a formula and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask you about, so you lost your arm and you make jokes about that, which I consider one of the most pure forms of comedy, that something like objectively bad happened and then you found the funny in it. Did that happen naturally, or was that something that you had to try to do?
No, because this goes back to identity and having a voice. So my left arm does not matter to my identity. Okay. Like I knew who I was before I lost my arm. And of course, being 40 years old and having lived a pretty full life, it's like, so I'm on vacation now. Like I'm retired.
Here it's like 20 years ago or something.
Dude, if it had happened while I was like trying to sling dick, I'm sorry, Mom. But it'd be a different story. But again, knowing who I am, then knowing that my arm doesn't matter to that, made it very easy from the get to be like, let's go. But on the flip side, comedy was the thing that kept me going. Like that's how we get out of here.
Yeah.
So all of the milestones were, how do we get out of here? And the first thing we're doing is getting on stage.
So you talk about you knew who you were. What age did you know, like feel confident that you knew who you were and were?
Okay, so that came crashing down like a ton of bricks in 2006. I was 26 years old. I'd gone back to school to take, I was going into business at one point in time, but I ended up going communications. But the class that did it, the moment it happened, we were sitting in a rhetorical studies class that everyone had to take at UC, and most people failed the first time. It was the hardest class in the whole fucking department. It was that cool. And we were talking about philosophy and worldview, and the teacher posed the question of, have you validated or have you verified your worldview? Like, do you hold contradictory beliefs?
Okay.
And does all that shit stand up? And in that, I took that home and started going through everything. I was like, what do I really know? And started laying it all out.
Like, what do I really believe in?
Yeah. And they're beliefs that you have to let go of. You find the counterpoint, and you're like, well, this quantum physics says this thing. So you can't have some woo-woo that you can't support by quantum physics. However, what we know about quantum physics allows for a lot of woo-woo.
But it has
being
to be
able,
educated woo-woo. Like you have to know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then if you want, for me to have these weird spiritual beliefs, I have to know a ridiculous amount of physics and quantum physics to be able to justify, well, how do you explain a soul? Well, quantum mechanics, microtubules in the brain, you can go down that whole thing. But I have to know that shit.
Scientific method it up then? Is that what you do?
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah. Because part of my goal in rhetoric was to write the communication equivalent of a theory of everything.
Okay.
So from a human standpoint, I wrote a theory that basically boils down all of human motives into three diametrically opposed ideals.
You remember those by chance? No.
Oh yeah, I can lay it out for you.
What are they? What are the three?
So the basic triangle is fear, power, and novelty.
Fear, power, novelty. Okay.
Yeah. So this is survival level. Like if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I'm not.
Skip it. Don't need it. So fear, power, and novelty. Like fear is the driving thing. You have to fear of death, fear of whatever. So this kicks survival, right?
Why advertisements rely on that, like the fear to not have something.
Sure, FOMO. And power is the empowerment over one's environment. And the novelty aspect, straight out of Terence McKenna's time wave theory, is we're motivated by shit we don't know. We're curious. Like we don't like being in ruts. That's not good for us. Okay. So new things are the driving force. We want more, we want newer, we want the newest iPhone, we want the next thing.
Yeah.
That's all base survival shit that gets manipulated out of that. And the flip side of that, so this is the human animal fear, power, and novelty primary drivers.
Okay.
In an ideal world, without the animal bullshit, it would be the opposite of those is truth, peace, and love.
Okay.
And you can boil those down to one is emotion, one is context, and one is, I forget at the moment, but they all interplay in this triangle. And it's a refinement of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the dramatistic pentad, and a couple other theories to get to something that other people have talked about, but to add a terminology to it and to bring it very close together.
Okay.
And to make it all connected.
And this brought you to self-realization about your own motivations and your own belief system and structures.
Yeah. The theory came out of that. It's like, what am I interested in? So let's start by testing everything that I know about that and figuring out how to refine that intelligence.
Do you remember like if there was any of your core beliefs that you ended up changing because of that class or dropping? One of the things I bring this up is there's an interesting exercise, philosophical exercise that you do where you imagine yourself growing up in 1920s Germany. And one thing you need to realize about yourself is if you grew up in that society, you probably would have been a Nazi. And so what do you notice about the culture and structure of today that you're being influenced on that is objectively wrong, but you can't tell because of the propaganda system that it's imposing on you?
Yeah, so nature versus nurture combined with free will is an interesting concept. I did not find, because I fell from religion, fell from grace a long time ago.
You grew up religious?
In the Episcopal Church.
Okay.
Yeah, but got away from that pretty quick. Like, I'm not real big into authority.
No.
So that's not fun.
I can relate. I grew up Russian Orthodox. As soon as I was out of the house, I was like, I'm 100% done with this forever.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love my family, but no, it's just not.
Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it.
Let's go ahead though. You guys go
have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun. But it starts like anybody else. As soon as you get the chance to view any of it objectively, then you start to poke holes in it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, well, where is the truth? And where, this, that, and the other.
Expanding your own world.
Yeah.
Which is the best thing you could do, in my opinion. That's my personal favorite thing about doing comedy is conversations like these, getting to know people, getting over your own fears of being on stage and talking to people about personal issues. And I think the more that I do comedy, the more confident I am in general in my life. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Because the fix of getting on stage and doing well, to me, don't worry about it, is there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome.
Do you have any favorite moments of doing comedy that come to mind? Things that stand out?
They're always the contentious moments. Well, okay, there's some obvious ones, like being asked by Shane Gillis to come back and open for him again the following night. That's fucking dope. Getting to work with Gilbert Gottfried for the Pensacola Comedy Fest. Donnell Rollins, got to work with him that night. I can't remember the other guy's name. Orny Adams. And then Bobby Kelly, getting to have a conversation and smoke a cigar with Bobby Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I grew up listening to this guy on O&A. And so to hang out with him and have him give me a compliment at the end of the show. And there's a lot of little moments like that stack up. So yeah, the little affirmations.
What's
credit for the world though?
No, of course not. Yeah. What's like your process like of like getting an idea and then eventually turning into a joke? Because some people, they have to write out everything down to the minute detail and they have to hit on certain points. Some people just have an abstract thought that they end up talking about and then, that's where the funny is. What's your process like?
It is mostly writing on stage. However, if I think of something and am close to something I can write with, which I usually am, I'll jot that down. Yeah. Then I'll find a way to take that on stage and make it funny. But I have found, as we mentioned already, that anytime I try and overdo it, the joke's not as funny. The first time, what I wrote down the first time is always funnier than everything up until polished, ready to fucking go.
That's exactly why I like doing your pull-out comedy, because what I found works the best with that is just say the first thing that comes to your head.
First thing.
Don't even think about it. Say it. And then if it doesn't work, one, that gives you the practice of saying something and not working and then trying to win the audience back. But two, that's probably the funniest thought you're going to have about that subject anyway.
Probably.
Especially when you're trying to think in front of people waiting for you to say shit. Ridiculous.
Because everything after that is trying too hard.
Yeah.
And who you really are thought that for a reason.
Yeah.
And so even using that to find your voice is a possibility. It just depends on which lesson you're looking for in comedy at the moment.
I don't know why. I remember I pulled out and it said, like, one of the subjects was horses, and I just immediately said giant cocks.
Yeah, there you go.
There's my voice right there.
Yeah, that one dude that died from getting fucked by, like, that's what comes to mind.
You got where I was coming from.
Yeah. You read enough news headlines, there's some that stick out.
What does that say about me and my childhood?
Crazily enough, I was at an open mic last night, and there was a lady that equine something other degree, and I didn't even bring up the dude that died from fucking a horse. Like, how good a person am I now that I didn't even bring that up? It's so polite of me.
Look at you, bringing love and peace to everybody.
So polite of me.
All right, so newer comics.
Yeah.
Either guys like me in my range or guys like just starting out. Is there anything that you wish you would have known about comedy before starting?
Other comics are assholes.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Haters.
Just
any success.
Horrible.
If you are expecting positive vibes from any success you get as a comic from other comics, don't keep it to yourself.
My biggest mistake for the first probably 6 months, year and a half, maybe 2 whole years, was thinking that everyone was a friend, that we were all comics, because I wanted that to be the case. And so it took me a long time to accept these people don't give up. Like, I was so mad one night, I called 2 people out they came inside and sat down and talked.
Yeah.
It's like, how fucking rude are you? Like, prominent people, showrunners, and tenured comics. And it's like, you assholes. And so those were the mistakes that I made, was getting worked up about shit like that, as opposed to, and if I'd been more focused on getting funny, I'd be funny faster.
And it does still, like, sometimes it does still bother me, and I wish that it didn't when I'm like at a mic or at a show, and then somebody who they're not going straight. Like, if you're going from a mic to a mic, or you're going from a mic to a show or whatever, then you understand. But if they're just leaving to leave, like, come be, like, why not stay and be an audience member?
Yeah,
they listen to you.
Those people are usually not good comics. With exceptions, like there's a point where you don't have to go to open mics all the time anymore. I used to think that everybody should be at every open mic all the time, because that's what I needed.
Yeah.
But I know now, being 6 years in, that if I want to skip a mic, I can. I don't need that practice. Like, that 5 minutes of practice is not the end of the world.
Right, but that you're on a different level. Like, somebody like me, if there's a mic in front of 2 drunk people staring at their phones, I'm there.
Got to get that
no matter
stage
what happens. Like, and that's a different story. So 6 years in.
So what was the question?
Advice for newer comics.
Yeah. Don't take any of it personally. Don't take any of it personally.
So if you're a guy trying to do comedy to make friends, maybe reconsider.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on where you are. I only know the places that I've been, and they are predominantly smaller comedy scenes. I'll throw this out there. Let's talk. I'm a firm believer that a comedy scene is only as good as its best comic. Okay. And on top of that, a comedy scene behaves the same way that those comics behave. Okay. And in smaller comedy scenes, there are more comics that are interested in being local heroes and are comedy hobbyists than there are professional comics. And if you don't see on a regular basis something vastly better than yourself, then all you're doing is just sitting farting in water.
Okay.
because you have to have something to challenge you. And if you get, everybody gets complacent. And so if you become locally famous and your goal was to be locally famous, then you don't need to go try really hard.
But there's
it's a different thing.
At the same time, I think there's different motivations for different comedy.
Yeah, some people get into comedy as a hobby.
Yeah, and if you,
some people,
I don't like. I got into comedy, and I love I don't know how everybody feels the same way, but if I could eventually turn this into my regular everyday job, go touring, be a headliner, who doesn't want that? That's my dream. But there are some people that get into comedy because they just want friends, because they want to have a social outlet, which is totally fine.
Yeah, it's great.
Honestly, if everybody in America was a comic, the world would be better.
Yeah, we would not have open mics without any of us.
Nobody is a fan of comedy like other comics. So,
yes and no.
Well, with context, with lots of context.
Exactly.
All right, so you're 6 years in. Where do you see yourself going in this? Is there a special in the future for you? Is that what you're trying to work towards? Are you trying to tour? Or are you just? I know you run High Humidity Humor. Do you set yourself? I guess what I'm really trying to say is, do you set yourself goals for comedy, short term or long term?
Yeah.
What are those goals?
Well, my first goal was I want to get into this and I want to figure out how to make money doing this. And then I got into comedy.
Nice.
And I eventually got invited to do a show and did a little show and got a few laughs and got paid a woeful amount of money. Like, it was really just a thanks.
Right.
Kind of thing. And so it all flashed before my eyes. It was like, well, they're way better. They're way funnier people here than I am. And this is all I'm getting. This is all I'm getting. Then these people aren't making any money. So I need to get these people paid. So when I'm funny, I can get paid.
Yeah.
And that's how I became a producer. And now I'm to the point where I didn't get into this to be a famous producer. I got into to be a road comic. I want to be able to sell tickets. I want to be able to make my own money. And I'm at a cool point where I am under management now. I am setting up the road gigs.
Recent development?
Yeah, like super recent.
Congratulations. I'm very happy for you.
Thank you. So yeah, that's the reason that I'm converting all my mics or all my shows into open mics, because a bunch of other shit that I've already said, and I think it's what people really want around here.
Do you get frustrated producing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Fuck yeah.
That specifically frustrates you? Politics of it all, or the drama that comes with it?
It is the lack of cooperation. That we all want the same thing. We all want a fire audience to tell jokes in front of.
Yeah.
And yet to get any two comics walking in the same direction, it's fucking impossible. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Sometimes it does. I don't know. I produce very, like ran a showcase for a couple of months or whatever, but it was basically handed to me. But it sounds like high school.
It is.
I don't get it.
It makes me so sad.
I don't understand the motivation. If you're a comic, why like the more the merrier kind of thing, right?
Well, it should be a meritocracy.
Yeah.
But because there aren't enough really good comics to call people out, it becomes a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And that's why we're stuck in high school, because there's this stubbornness that just doesn't want to admit that if we all got together and just go be funny and let the crowd decide.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the rest of that shit.
Yeah.
Just go be funny. But so many people have so many things but before that just blind and cloud. And
so would you say that you started producing and currently producing comedy as a means to an end to get to your goal?
Oh yeah, it was all about stage time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it was.
You didn't see enough opportunities, so you created one.
A lot of them. Yeah.
Why wouldn't that be universally lauded? I don't get, but
yeah. So like
the frustration that I can hear from you, who in their right mind would be frustrated?
Yeah. So I got really lucky. I started out Blind Mule on Wednesday nights. There were only 2 shows, Blind Mule on Wednesday night, and Back Porch on Tuesday nights. I got to host the Blind Mule open mic real quick because Ryan Adams bowed out. He was like, I want to take a break. So I got super lucky because I happened to be there that late and they needed somebody. And then after that, I started looking around for more stage time, and it was hours away. And I said, fuck this. I found one of the best comedy producers in town. Her name's Emily Dillon. She lives in Maine now, but she used to run big ticket shows and big budget shows. It was like that. I need her. So I got to open up the shows and get my stage time, and I got to work with some badass people. And Emily showed me how to run bigger budget shows and do that whole thing. So it was good.
What would you say is your next step that you're trying to take, like specifically the next process in your development as a comedian?
It's
maybe not booking, but just your process as a comic in general.
It's my process right now is to refine from 30 to 50 minutes.
Okay.
Because I did a 30-minute set recently that went well, a little sluggish towards the end, but I had plenty of jokes in the tank. So I know that if I crank all that down, I can get to a tight 40. Okay. But I got to work 40 to 50. I got to figure out what that is, 40, 50 wise, because I'm losing steam at 25. And so I don't have a good read on everything after that. That's what I'm focused on right now. Because I can hit 20 all day long. Like, let's go, let's do 20, and I can make it high tempo. And that's what I'm going on the road with. I'm a power feature. We do 20 half hour. Love all these people gathering themselves. I told you
they're all part of my podcast. They're all now. Thank you for being part of my podcast. You're
me too. Shout out.
Some future comic right there. All right. So
what else you want to know? Stealing your Sharpie. I love these.
You're good. It's I got through all the questions I want to ask. I love hearing about your philosophy and stuff. Mostly, I just like full disclosure. I have no idea whether or not my podcast is ever going to amount to anything, but while I'm doing it, I get to talk to very good comedians and get advice for myself. Mm-hmm. At the very, very, very least, I can go back and rewatch some of the stuff or learn and take this to the heart and become a better comic, be more motivated about the whole thing, whatever. Like, we're all just trying to do our best.
Well, the idea is I think everybody has ideas and ambitions and a dream. Yeah. But the reality is you can push it as far as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to see how far that is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter where you end up as long as that's where your path honestly and genuinely took you. That's fine.
But if you don't genuinely put forth the full effort, then
you end up over here.
Right.
And it's your hobby.
Yeah.
You're not a professional. It's your hobby.
And
by the way, when I say professional, what I mean by professional comic is somebody that gets paid to do hours.
And that's your.
So like none of us qualify. No. Corey Mack is, I think, the only one in Pensacola that's been paid to do an hour. I can't think of anyone else
one of my
that lives here now. Oh yeah, Corey's fucking great.
He's so like as a I keep going back to this, as like a newer comic, when you get like those cool elbow rubs with the big wigs of the scene and stuff like that, nothing means more to you in those moments. Yeah. I was so lucky because he just randomly put out this Facebook post about, hey, I got an opening for someone. I was like, I'll do it. He's like, well, you're too new, but I'll let you do 5. We'll see how it goes, blah, blah, blah. And I did well, and he took me to New Orleans. It was fucking awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, I learned so much on that trip.
Yeah. And that's something we were talking about earlier, the people, you can tell a lot by who leaves a show early. Like, there's some people that are tenured and they got to go and they got to get home, and that's fine. But you'll find the better comics are the people who stick around to see what everybody else is doing.
Right, to learn.
Yeah, because if you don't take class, what are you doing?
Was there anybody specifically in the scene that was like that for you?
JJ Curry. Best example, man. He'd roll in, he'd have his headphones on, he'd fucking kill his 5 minutes, and he's gone. I wish I had done that more. I should have heeded his advice.
Nice. That's awesome. All right, so you run High Humidity Humor. Are you secretly telling everybody you're a Triple H fan, that you're a WWE guy?
No, I was a WWF guy
Attitude Era?
Way back.
No, okay.
Jake the Snakes Roberts was my dude.
Rowdy Piper.
Love that guy. Love that guy. He probably was the low-key subconscious influence on the kill.
Bret Hart.
No, not as much. Not as much. I like the Undertaker because I met the Undertaker in Mobile one time. Growing up, because he lived there. I was at this. Oh shit! Sorry, I got excited. I think it was the pallbearer guy, like his like manager, quote unquote. But way back in the day, had an apartment behind the Mount Asia putt golf. Okay. And there was a cinema back there. And we were at the Applebee's because it was the closest thing to eat right there, and there they were.
He's giant. Is he actually 7 foot, or do they fucking...
I don't remember, but to a kid, he's fucking huge.
All right. Last thing before I get you, I kind of want to keep the podcast about 45 minutes, but what's next for you? Do you have any big shows coming up that you want to?
Sure. What's next?
You got that headlining thing in Tallahassee you were telling me about.
Oh yeah, I'm probably gonna. That's like an open mic thing, but I'll probably be at Birds at one of those shows coming up here soon. Just keep an eye out. I'm hitting the road, and I don't know when our first date is, but that's coming up. And I guess the biggest thing locally is all the shows are going to be open mics now. So we got 4 nights in a row in Mobile.
Monday at Serta's.
Yeah.
And then first and third Thursdays here at Odd Colony.
Which we may change that now that there's so many shows on Thursdays. We'll see.
You think, like, are you trying to set up, not, you don't have to tell me if no, it's fine, but are you trying to set up like a tour that you're going through? Is that coming up in the near future for you?
You mean from a producer side or from a comic side? No. From a comic side, yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I want to head up towards Maine.
Okay.
So like do the whole East Coast would be awesome. Head over to Jacksonville. You know, like hit Orlando and then Jacksonville and then go north. That's what I want to do. We'll see if the bookings work out that way. probably end up in fucking Kansas.
So this is more of a curiosity standpoint, but how does that work? Like when you are setting up to do, like, how do you find venues to even approach to do like a tour kind of thing? So just like, these people already from being in the scene?
Well, the way it works for me now is I tell my manager where I want to go, and they say, we don't care. and they do the same thing we do. They take their network and they start calling people, and they send out my EPK and they say, we got this guy doing this thing, and I may or may not be traveling with a headliner. We'll see. I would prefer to be traveling with just one person. Okay. But at the same time, I like not being responsible for anybody else too. Yeah. So I'd be happy with it either way. Right. I'm stoked either way. It doesn't matter.
One of my favorite things about like doing comedy on the road is getting to a place and then being able to explore the city on my own.
Oh yeah.
I love that. Try and hit on girls, whatever.
You got to try.
You got to try. You got to put effort.
Yeah. Dude, I love wandering around and just
being a nomad.
Yeah.
That's who I am, like legitimately. Yeah. That's who I am as a person.
Qui-Gon Kane, just walking through life.
Yeah. All right, so last question. Where can people find what's
ComptonSmith.com.
ComptonSmith.com.
It's all there.
And highhumidity.com if they want to come out to the mics.
Yep.
All listed on that.
There's a link for the high humidity humor thing, which that's one of a couple of different production companies, but that's for another time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, it's been fun, Yasha. Thanks.